Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from Child Protection Party. Again, we're faced with a horrific couple of weeks where it has been evident that the child protection system has failed dramatically the children in our community. The time has come, I think, for us to find a way to start to challenge the system perhaps differently. And one of the suggestions that we have here from the Child Protection Party is that you contact us and tell us your story so we can get your story out there as well. Today I've fielded a number of phone calls actually from people who have taken up this offer, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to meet up with these people over the next couple of weeks to talk to you about the things that have happened in your life that have meant that the children in your care have been removed from you. What we discover time and time again is that there are kids that are removed because of generally not necessarily unfounded reasons, but certainly reasons that could be and problems that could be met and changed so that the parents could have those kids in their care. But recently we've come across many cases where kids have not been removed from parents who are clearly incapable of parenting those children. 2 children have died and a number of children have been taken from their parents because of criminal neglect. Well, I need to say that the issue around criminal neglect is rare. We very rarely see the government take action or the police take action against parents who are criminally neglecting their kids. One could argue that there are many cases where criminal neglect probably could be argued, but doesn't, because the department chooses to remove the children and keep them safe that way, supposedly. Criminal neglect, though, is something which generally is relatively hard to prove, I think, and so therefore the police are reluctant to prosecute people for that. However, recently there have been certain cases whereby it has been evident that these children have been damaged. The problem that we have is that many of these children were known to the child protection system, and the child protection system failed them. It fails at both ends of the spectrum. It fails to work with parents to have their kids maintained with them. It fails to understand what the issues are that impact most parents, and it fails to remove children when they're desperately in need of being safe. So the dilemma is this. We as a community have to find a way to be able to challenge this system so that it keeps children safe. So where possible, it can actually reunite the children with their parents so that the parents can have the experience of simply being parents with these kids. And it also means that we have to find ways to work with parents who are struggling. The issues that seem to have arisen over the last few weeks have been that some of these parents, I suspect, one of them in particular, may have come from a middle-class family whereby the system probably said, well, you're not in poverty, you haven't got a mental health issue that we're particularly concerned about, there may not be any domestic violence or drug use, therefore we're not going to be over concerned with you. And as a result, a couple of the kids were badly damaged as a result of the neglect of the department to take action when perhaps they could have done so. The department tends to look down at one end of the scale, which is those people that are, as I've just highlighted, in poverty, that are struggling with their lives. They're the people that the department focuses on. However, there are many people out there who simply could have their kids returned to them if the government chose to work with those families appropriately. But what I want to do today is I want to talk about those families, those people who or those stories actually that have come about over the last couple of weeks, and to discuss with you what they are, how they've been handled, and some of the comments, the interesting comments that have been made by parents, grandparents, and others about the system itself. So, in order to do so, the first article I'm going to look at, Child Protection Department is swamped by hundreds of reports. So I'm going to start from there, and then we'll move through the other cases. So the first one is Child Protection Department is swamped by hundreds of reports each day, and this just tells us a little bit about the fact that this system cannot handle what is happening in relation to the number of kids that need help, or the number of families in particular that need help. They turned a blind eye. And there's an interesting comment by Malinauskas, the Premier here in South Australia, who basically threw his hands up in the air and said, enough's enough, I can't deal with this, it's all too hard, we're overwhelmed, the staff are overworked, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's the worst and possible poorest excuse that I can think for failing our children. South Australia must be willing to have a difficult conversation, and I think this is so important, and this is the conversation we're trying to have now. It's balancing between those people that can have their kids in care and those people who are going to damage, hurt and harm their children in the ways that we've seen in the last few weeks, even where a couple of children have died. It's a difficult conversation with a parent if they are concerned about the child, about a child they see in their neighbourhood school or childcare centre. Now, it is important, I think, to be able to identify when you notice something happening and a child in particular is in need of help. And sometimes we hear or we see something and we wonder, shall I deal with this case right now? Shall I notify somebody of what I see? Am I dobbing on this particular parent? I think some of the best ways of approaching this is to, if possible, and if we know these people, to have a conversation with them about what they've noticed in relation to the child, whether the child is fearful or whether the child is at direct harm in that moment, and to talk to the parent about finding different strategies to be able to work and even seek help around their anger or their drug use or whatever it might be that might impeding their parenting. So we can take action. We just need to be able to find ways in which to be able to address that issue. It isn't necessarily about making a report to the Child Protection Department, or CARL as it's known here, because in some cases we may not need to. I had a case, which is a personal case, a couple of weeks ago where I was with a group of people and I was confronted by a parent yelling and screaming at a child and up to that child's face, and I could see in the child a great deal of fear. I could see that this child was shuddering as a result of this father yelling and screaming in this child's face. I can still see it now. It was a very traumatic moment to see a child so afraid. I confronted the uncle of this child and told him the way I had experienced this, and he, in the first instance, was a wee bit defensive, but he did take time to think about what I had said and how concerned I was at how this child was being treated in that moment. I had no idea whether this is a recurring occurrence. I saw it once. However, he did go back and talk to the grandparents of this child, and they agreed that the behaviour of the parent was inappropriate and they were going to choose a way to intervene. I think this is a helpful model for all of us to use. If we notice something happening, that we do address it, we don't remain silent, but it doesn't necessarily mean under all circumstances we need to report it. There will be circumstances, though, where we do, and we then need the department to act responsibly, to intervene, to do an appropriate investigation, and perhaps, if need be, to have a child removed, or to at least work with the parents to improve the situation. So, as this article continues to say, a Child Protection Department is fielding more than 80,000 reports from concerning neighbours, teachers, nurses and others each year, or almost 220 a day. Now, the reality is that it's going to be almost impossible to address all of those issues over that period. 220 cases a day, that's massive. The department has to work through a set of priorities, as I discussed in one of my previous feeds. So it's a struggle, I know, and the system is overworked, I also know, and we certainly know that social workers are challenged by the amount of work that they have to do. So this is where Peter Malinauskas comes in. Has conceded that when he was first told these figures, the scale of the problem seemed too big to even comprehend. And it is big. It's massive. And you need to accept the size of the problem, Peter. And you need to find a way to manage it and to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, kids are being taken away unnecessarily, and kids are also dying. And I know it's a conflict. I get all of that. But we need to start to stand up and take action and demand that the government improves their systems so that all children are cared for and that families can change the behaviours which are causing children to be at risk in the first place. Certain people who work with children, such as teachers, police, doctors, are required to report. We all know that. But Child and Family Focus SA Chief Executive Officer Rob Martin said all of us need to think about what else we can do to help. And that's why I brought up this example that I personally had a few weeks ago, whereby I think we can all intervene. You know, if we see someone being abused in the street, it is our right, it is our duty to ensure that that person is safe. And in that case, calling the police, or if you feel that you're up to it, stepping in. It's like one of the cases I'm going to talk about in a moment, whereby on the freeway, when a mother had pulled the kids out of the car and was stabbing them, and someone had the courage to pull up and stop this woman. If he hadn't stopped her, then the possibility is that both of those children would have died. Sometimes it takes courage to step into the breach and to do the right thing. Sometimes it means that we have to do something that makes us feel uncomfortable in order to be able to save a child's life. And I admire that person. Whoever that person is needs to get some significant accolade for having done so. And the very case that I'm talking about is here. Now, the sister of... Now, this is interesting because this does tell us that that the department may have been involved in this case. So this is the case where the woman stopped on the freeway. She got the kids out of the car. She was stabbing them, and someone stepped in to help and to subdue the woman, the mother. The sister of the woman accused of stabbing her own children on the side of the road says her siblings have been battling mental health issues for years. So clearly the mental well-being problems were an issue. The degree to which they were or were not addressed continues to remain a mystery. She allegedly stopped a silver Honda stand on South Road and Grand Junction Road intersection, removed her children from the car, stabbed them multiple times. In a social media post on Tuesday, someone said her sister, who has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, had multiple contact with the Child Protection Department and SA Police. So the question that we need to be asking here, was this a case where the department could have been aware that she was so unbalanced that the children were unsafe in her care? And my guess would be they must have been, because there were probably multiple occasions where either she was reported to the department or she'd had mental health interventions, which meant that she would have been flagged in some way. Yet the children, for whatever reason, remained within her care. I'm assuming that there are also parents, the sister and others who would have been prepared to take over the care of these children if necessary. Yet the department, for reasons that we do not know, has not intervened in this particular case. Despite repeated interactions with SAPOL and the Department of Child Protection, the system has failed to appropriately intervene, Jessica said. Jessica said the children shouldn't have been in her car and other alternatives considered. She said the family was still trying to piece together what allegedly happened on Monday, but her sister had been battling mental health and drug addiction for the past 8 years, so she also had a drug problem. We're still learning how things go to this point and need time to understand what happened that led to this. She had severe mental illness, drug abuse. SA police reported Megan Somerville is missing while she was heavily pregnant. Another concern, how many concerns must there have been? With concerns held for the welfare as she suffered from a medical condition. The police are stating that other people helped detain the woman and they need to be awarded something for that. We're extremely grateful to people that stopped and rendered assistance. and that it would have been grave had they not stopped. She said police had not established what led to the frankly quite horrific scene on the overpass. We don't know what triggered the episode. We don't know at this point in time where she was going or what she was doing. The little boy has undergone surgery, and one of the other kids was in a serious condition, I think. As in a stable condition, and one was under surgery. So this just highlights, I think, the inadequacies that sit within our system, whereby we don't tend to respond to what's happening in relation to parents' mental well-being, and sometimes, so there's this strange dichotomy between needing to have to respond to what's happening with regard to someone's mental well-being, working with that family to address the issues so that the kids are safe. And on the other hand, there have been many cases I've worked with over the years where children have been taken from their parents with very little evidence whatsoever. In this case, there appeared to be quite a bit. But for whatever reason, and I'm suggesting it might be about their social status maybe, that caused the police not to intervene. Now, the other story, where there's criminal neglect also, was where have charged a man and woman with criminal neglect of a 2-year-old child. They say the child was taken to the Women's and Children's Hospital by ambulance after first being brought into a medical centre in Blair Athol in Adelaide's North about 10:30 on Monday. So 2 cases on Monday. After an investigation, detectives charged a 40-year-old man with no fixed address, 34-year-old Freeling woman with criminal neglect. The woman is expected to appear in the Elizabeth Magistrate Court on Friday, while the man is expected to appear in the Adelaide Magistrate Court. This new case comes as South Australia Police is investigating the unrelated deaths of 2 children from possible criminal neglect. So already we've got 5 children, I think, at this point, that are in the care of the minister. Sorry, I lie. 2 of them have passed away. So the new cases comes as a bit of unrelated. 6-year-old Charlie died 6 months after being found unresponsive in her Manapara home, and Mackay died in February. So just another example of where this is going. Says Denise Shepherd has slammed the DCP for withholding her grandson's condition after alleged criminal neglect. And I think this is the case we're just talking about. The grandmother of a 2-year-old boy who is at the centre of a serious criminal neglect investigation says the state's Child Protection Service is unaccountable. And we here at the Child Protection Party would agree with that. It's most unaccountable, and needs to be more so. How they go about that, heaven only knows. They're a closed book. You can't go into the youth court. No one knows whatever happens in the youth court. You can't report about the youth court. You can't report names. You can't report situations or events. You can't do any of that, because if you do so, you'll be held liable and charged via the legislation. Jimmy was taken to hospital after his mother, Emma Jade Short, who is charged with criminal neglect, took him to Blair Athol Medical Centre, where he was allegedly found with severe burns to his face and body. So it's interesting. Jimmy is not his real name, incidentally. But we do know the name of his mother. So there's some sort of association here. Anybody that knows who Emma is would know who the child is, and also probably who the father is. Miss Shepherd said she was shocked to see the reports after having previously looked after the boy earlier in the year. That was until the boy recently began living with Short. Now, we don't know the reasons for that. We don't know the involvement of the department, whether the department thought that this child should be returned. And then for this to happen, it's horrific. In a cruel twist, Mr. Shepherd's eldest son, Rodney Clough, the uncle of Jimmy, had also been charged in relation to the incident. She said since she found out about Jimmy's alleged injuries, the Child Protection Department have provided no further information. So they become this closed book, this place which fails in a sense of transparency and directness with the public and with the people, particularly that are concerned, which are namely the parents and other people that are really interested in the well-being of this child. I immediately tried to call the hospital and was told that there was no one in there by his name. But that's what DCP does, she says. I'm making a phone call for goodness sake. I'm not hurting anyone, just trying to find out how my grandson is. She said the last time she saw Jimmy was not his real name, on August the 6th, just 2 days before he was presented to hospital. She said she had been blocked by the DCP because of her son's alleged involvement, despite doing nothing wrong herself. Of course, she gets blamed for someone else's behaviour. That's just the way the department works. Now I've been blocked and I've done nothing wrong. They're never accountable under any circumstances. The police are toothless tigers against DCP as well. They pretty much just back up or support whatever DCP needs to stop family members having contact with their kids. SA Police says SA Health, the Child Protection Department, have remained tight-lipped over the boy's condition. When our spokesman for all three said they were unable to comment whether he was still in hospital or about what level of care he was receiving, citing reasons including an ongoing police investigation. So the department is working closely with, of course, with SA Police, and so they are. The departments, of course, are unable to comment on individual matters, and the Child Protection Act case-related information must be kept confidential, even though it's in the best interest of the community in order to know what the department is actually doing in relation to this case, and particularly why it is that the department have chosen to not get involved in this case, or what the circumstances were around this. So it is important that we do whatever it is that we can in order to make sure that the department is being held accountable. So I want to thank those people that came on board. I appreciate that. And for anybody else that might come on board later and have a conversation with us, it would be most helpful. I also just want to mention that if you do have an issue that you would like to talk to us about, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this feed, please contact us at admin@childprotection.party so that we can get in contact with you, tell us a little bit about your story, organise an opportunity for you to have a conversation with us about what's happening for you so that we can provide a voice for you and your children. There have been a number of comments, so I'll just come down to them if I can. So Jasmine Lee Rose, thank you very much for your comment. And Kristen, thank you as well. Not child protection in my opinion, more like child danger. That's true. I need help at court on Tuesday 23rd. I need a Mackenzie friend. I don't know what we can do about that, Lee, but make contact with us through our messenger and we will see whatever it is that we can do. We all need to take action and we need to do something about it now. So please do what you can to make sure that the children in your community are safe. Thanks very much for being with me. Take care and look after yourselves.